Welcome to the Inside Texas Football YouTube channel, powered by InsideTexas.com. This is our Saturday Roundtable. We got Coach Dub, we got Justin Wells, we have Ian Boyd. I am Joe Cook. Make sure you like the video, subscribe to the channel. We got a bunch of great stuff coming on a daily basis, including later today when we should have a lot more recruiting action from today's camp. Make sure you get all the action immediately at InsideTexas.com. You can use the promo code IT1 and get yourself 2 months of access for just $1. That'll get you all the way through almost the start of training camp. So you're going to want to keep up with everything IT. Today's Saturday Roundtable topics: roster limits with the House versus NCAA settlement and some of the effects of it. Scholarships could be eliminated, or scholarship caps could be eliminated. But still, if players are going to be paid, they're going to have to figure out how many players they want to pay. As a result, that could get rid of walk-ons. So we'll talk about some of the effects of that. We will also talk about Texas kickoff times. Oklahoma, the kickoff time for the Red River Shootout was announced, also a UTSA game, and talking about some storylines from SEC spring meetings about the Texas A&M game and when it might kick off. So, gentlemen, I guess to start off, how many football players total do you think a team needs to be able to operate efficiently when you think about college football with practices, with conference championships and the 12-team playoff? Justin, how many players do you think a roster needs in order to operate at a way the coaches would prefer?
85.
Why fix what already works?
It's not broke. Don't go in there with tools trying to jack with it. I get that there's changes. I know how NIL and the portal have shaped this. I know how the cap is talking salary cap and things of that sort, private sector money coming in. There's so many things. Not everything's a good idea, Joe, and I think it's pretty good where it's at. If we get back to those days where you got 100 to 120 scholarship kids on a team, then it's going to resemble the 50s and the 60s of college football. And I thought we were way past that at this point.
To that point, Texas' current roster is not just 85 players. Even if they were at their full allotment, I think they have usually somewhere between 110 to 115, 120 players on the roster at a given time. Ian, what do you think about the idea of how many players a roster needs?
Well, the NFL has 52?
52. I almost said 52.
But the NFL they have a number of they have a practice squad also that I believe has 16 people. And the NFL has a number of other different factors. Like, everyone is a professional. Their bodies are already developed and juiced up for the punishment that the league administers. They're better compensated. They have medical plans now. If they make it, 4 or 5 years in the league, they get lifelong. 5 years in the league gives you lifelong health insurance
and pension.
The pension plan. These college kids, they need the practice time to develop because they're not finished products. They don't even know what they're doing yet. They don't know how to stay healthy yet. So all those factors, you would want to keep it larger. The reason to shrink it down would be because, the universities may push to shrink it down, and it's going to be because for years, the way this has worked is the university hoards all the money, and all these expenses have been paid for by donors and boosters, right? Like Texas just hoards it all. They never have to touch their massive endowment. They never have to cut staff from administration or sell properties or things like that. The donors always take care of it for them. With this new plan, they're going to have to share from that TV funds. So I'm not blaming Texas in particular. I think universities everywhere are going to want to shrink that number down. But there's a lot of reasons why you don't want to do that in college football, because it would really disrupt the nature of the sport. And then walk-ons, really not essential, but it's a really fun quirk of the game. We would survive without it, but I think we would all be sad to see something like that go.
We'll get to walk-ons in just a second. Coach, I want to bring you in because you've looked at the roster construction process when you were in college football, and you've also seen all these different people, and at Texas specifically, someone like Brandon Harris get this general manager position where, you combine NIL and dedicating numbers to positions. Like, the stakes get raised that much more for those people, general managers, and also head coaches, if they have to be more exact with, let's say, 90 than they would if they had to get just 85 and maybe 30 more walk-ons. Those guys, the pressure rails up on those guys. Is that an effect that you think these guys would want?
I would say no. It would change. It would change a lot, right? It would change the way they practice, especially in the summer and fall camp, right? A lot of teams two spot, and you run a lot of guys in and out, and now you're risking people getting hurt. So it's going to change the way you maybe not as physical during fall camp, and that's going to affect you during the season. So I definitely don't think the coaches want that whatsoever. I think they like having the walk-ons because those walk-ons, I know you're going to talk about it later, but walk-ons fill a lot of needs like during fall camp and spring practice even. So taking that away and having a roster limit, or it wouldn't be good. So, I mean, like I said, kind of leave it alone, man. I think that's just the best way, honestly.
So I'm glad you brought up two spotting, because not only did Steve Sarkisian talk about that, he does it all the time. And for those who, just to kind of give it a quick explanation, let's say you're running 7-on-7 and you have, 7 offensive players, 7 defenders. Well, if you're one spotting, that means you just have, Anthony Hill and David Benda and his bunch out there against Quinn and Bond and the rest, and everybody else is on the sideline. If you two spot, and Texas had enough players on the roster this spring via a bunch of early enrollees and transfers to do it, that's when you split the field. You have one half doing it, and you have the other half doing it. So everybody gets those reps. So that's what two spotting is. And kind of to that point, you talk about spreading those reps out. Football is a violent game. If you're doing contact drills, you get hit, and hits accumulate. And if you only have, 90 guys instead of 120, then that's more hits for guys. You have to be real smart about it. So that's another effect that they may eliminate. But Justin, when you think about kind of what we're talking about with two spotting, just overall, if they reduce the number of players on the roster, practice habits are going to change dramatically, and probably in a way that more mirrors the NFL, where they rarely go to something like full contact practices, especially during the season.
And that echoes exactly what Ian said. You want more injuries? Shorten the roster. You're going to have more injuries. You know why? They'll take away the practice time, and that way their body is, in August, when it's building up the durability of taking those hits, getting your body mentally prepared and physically prepared for the gauntlet of the next 5 months of the season. Because I've seen college coaches in the past cut back on the physicality of practice for a number of reasons. Injuries, just roster, not enough on the roster, stuff like that. What happened? They go into the season and they lose 7 or 8 guys in the first 2 weeks of the season. I think it happened at the University of Houston with Browse, and one of his first years, where he went an entire spring where nobody hit each other. And then when they got to fall, it was murder's row. Guys were dropping like flies. And it was quickly realized this was a really bad idea. You need spring to bang on each other. You need a little bit of that in the fall. You need a lot of that in the fall as well. And so, like Ian said, in the NFL, these guys are developed. Their bodies are filled out. They're ready to rock and roll. They're pros. College, they're not there yet. It's just a step above high school, and they're damn sure not there yet. And so, to me, less the roster spots, I think you would get more injuries, and then you're compounding the problem instead of actually, finding a solution.
Where I think it would go though is let's say they cut the roster size down to, let's say, just like they pick an arbitrary number like 65. They're like, it's not as bad as the NFL, but it's less money we have to share, right?
Right.
And then you have 65 spots. What's going to happen? Well, maybe Texas boosters go over and they juice up the local Texas State program or the some other program, and then they funnel 4-star players that aren't quite ready to play at Texas, and then you just develop them and let them play at these smaller schools, and then you call them up to the big leagues, right? And maybe you even pay them under the table so that it's like, hey, when you blow up in a year or two, you're going to go to Texas. You're not going to go to, you're not going to go get money from USC or Georgia, right? I mean, the game could get extremely complicated with different levels like that. It's not hard to see it developing in that direction if they really mess with the roster size.
It's unrestricted free agency and it's unregulated. And, we laugh about like the suggestion of under the table stuff and, GJ Kinney's program being the beneficiary, but like we laughed at the idea of paying players, within the last 15 years or so. And now they're going to be getting some of the of paying the players over the table by NCAA approval in the last 15 years or so. So, I mean, it sounds far-fetched.
But how do you recruit? If you're GJ, how do you sell to a kid, come play for me and my minor league team? And if you develop, then you might get to be a backup at Texas.
That's how it is now. That's already the case.
That is starting to happen. But, I mean, then that's a lot of pride to swallow as well. I kind of want to move on to the walk-on conversation. And I think that's an important one to have. Ian, you had mentioned that it's obviously a quirky thing within college football. Think of the idea of 85 scholarships, guys who get their room, board, and tuition paid for. And then you have 30 or so who are going to the University of Texas or any university on their own dime, paying for their own room, paying for their board, getting some of the perks, but not all the perks that a scholarship player would. And it's kind of a, American dream story. I mean, you look at someone like in Texas case, there are a lot of prominent examples. Dylan Haynes is on the all-time, interception leaderboard after starting his career as a walk-on. Michael Taft is competing for starting responsibility. Even Thatcher Milton, made a big catch in the spring game and got to show off some of his ability as well. So it's a unique thing.
There's a Heisman in Austin. Walk on.
I was about to say he's from Austin.
Ricky Williams.
Williams
was a walk on.
That's a little bit more
intricate. Helped the program use that scholarship for someone else because the Phillies picked up the tab. He had bonus money, which would be NIL these days. Without that, you lose that scholarship player, you lose that extra lineman, you lose that extra skill guy. Ricky, there's a Heisman winner that was a walk-on at Texas.
There's two, but we won't mention the other one for maybe some disdain that Texas fans have toward him. But still, it's a unique aspect. But from the practical standpoint, Charlie, they're the practice dummies. Like that old trope and that old kind of insult does ring true.
Yeah,
you need these guys, and if you get rid of it, not only are you getting rid of something unique to the sport, but again, you're getting rid of the guys who provide the scout team looks and things like that, and are taking. I mean, maybe granted, it helps push some of those players to lower D1 or high FCS schools and depress the talent pool a little bit, but still, that's something that these D1 schools in Texas, who tries to take a lot of pride in its walk-on program, are probably not a fan of.
Yeah, I can see them not being a fan of that. I mean, walk-ons play an important part. You don't really realize it until you get kind of late in the season. A lot of those guys, they're there for pride, right? They want to go to Texas. They want to be there. So they're going to give their all at practice. They're going to give you the best looks and get you prepared week in and week out. Then you got those guys who may have offers other places, but want to go to a place like Texas to prove that they can play at the highest level. If they never touch the field, at least they got film versus the best, right? And then they can gain a scholarship somewhere else. So you kind of taking that away. You're taking that option away from a kid who lifelong dream was to play at Texas. Now he can't even go as a walk-on, right? So I don't think it's a good deal, but like I said, they're very, very important. They're really key to success of winning teams. All scout team players are, especially walk-ons.
And
Joe, what does Texas A&M do without the 12th man program? A school so deep rooted in tradition, you're going to take away something? Oh, I could see a lawsuit in the courts jumping all over this.
And to that point, at SEC spring meetings, Mike Elko was very firm in I am very against this because, like you mentioned, Jackie Sherrill had the kickoff team. There's still one every year. But Ian, there's another aspect, a little bit, well, actually more off the field, in that kind of what Charlie talked about. It's these guys' dreams to go to Texas. They would, do anything, and that's a common college football fan saying, "Oh, I want a guy who would do anything instead of these prima whatever." But when you have a team of 120 something individuals, having 30 that are going to row the boat and row hard helps with the cultural aspect. And you would definitely lose that and have to be a better understander of your culture if you're a coach without those types of guys.
And college football right now is already struggling with something, which is that ideally it's a very regional game. And it's a very like the players are our boys from our communities, and they're representing us. I think football is such a warlike sport that you can kind of get away, even if the players are kind of mercenary and they come from all over. But it's still, I mean, like even in the NFL, which is, completely mercenary, what happens every time when there's a local kid that's a quarterback that's available to be drafted? Like the fans just lose their minds and they're like, you got to draft this guy, right? You got to bring like Houston Texans, you got to draft Vince Young. And like how brutal was it when like the Titans took him, right, for that city. So you really don't want to sever the sport too much from that aspect. And like walk-ons are a really good way of doing that, where you just like how like a lot of Texas's walk-ons are from Austin schools, or else they're from like Houston or Dallas schools that everybody knows. All they care about is representing Texas, representing the state, helping Texas football be as good as it can be. They don't care about how much NIL they get or whatever else. And I don't know. You really need something like that, I think, to keep the game rooted. You don't want to just be NFL light all the way.
Yeah, and to that point, I mean, I'm thinking of some walk-ons off the top of my head. Bird Auburn from Flower Mound. He ends up at Texas, and is obviously the starting kicker, still a walk-on. You look at Brooks Kieschnick Jr., who is Brooks Kieschnick's son, one of the best college baseball players to ever do it. He's a walk-on. I think he went to Alamo Heights or somewhere in San Antonio, if I'm not mistaken. And even thinking about Dylan Haynes, going back to that one, Lago Vista from the north side of Lake Travis. So like a lot, it speaks to that. And the only like walk-on, I'm sure there's one I'm forgetting, but like one of the only walk-ons who I know is not from Texas is Brady Sarkeesian. And, I think we understand the connection there. So walk-ons are obviously extremely important. They really help the culture and make honestly practice practical in the way it's currently run. We got more to talk about before we get there. Got to give a shout out to Laura Baker of the Elite Andy Allen real estate team. She is who you need to call if you are looking for a home. Give her a call at 512-784-0505. Ian Boyd did. He'll be moving to the Austin area in a couple months, maybe even sooner than that. And it's through a lot weeks. There we go. And it's through the help of Laura Baker. So give her a call, 512-784-0505. Gentlemen, one more thing to talk about. That's kickoff times. We learned on Thursday that Texas, their game against UTSA will be at 6 p.m. at home. I think that's week 3. The Red River Shootout will be at 2:30 in the Cotton Bowl. Those are the ones we know now. Obviously, Michigan's going to be an 11 a.m. kick on Big Noon on Fox. Colorado State is going to be 2:30, so everybody get ready to melt in the Texas heat. UTSA at home on ESPN, that's pretty solid. That used to be an LHN game, and now it's on the big network. But 2:30, that prime the time slot that the SEC seems to value most, once held by CBS, now held by Texas, or now held by ESPN. They're putting the Red River Shootout in that time slot. Justin, thoughts on it being at 2:30 instead of the 11 a.m. we've been pretty used to?
It should have always stayed at 2:30. 2:30 is the perfect time because 11's just a little too early because of stupid traffic around Fair Park. Getting in, you're hungover the night before because you saw your alumni buddies and you had to go out and have fun. 11 a.m. is too early, people. Way too early. You're barely awake. 2:30 is that good time there because anything later, And then you got a lot of fans that are going to get liquored up, and you have no idea what that scene might look like at 6 o'clock at the state fair.
There's some idea.
It could be a little
I have
rowdy.
an idea. I'm pretty sure
Yeah.
the only person I've ever seen on PCP was outside of the fair park. But Ian, any
He was
thoughts
a
on?
walk-on.
Yeah. Speaking of that, any other thoughts on the Texas and Oklahoma playing at 2:30?
Yeah, if you want to get your like fried whatever, or your Fletcher's corn dog, or your like bacon wrapped turkey leg or whatever, the 11:30 kickoff is so wildly inconvenient.
Yes.
Like when do you? Because like ideally you could get lunch and then go into the stadium
Exactly.
to work on a couple beers or whatever, or water. either very likely to be needed while you're in that stadium. And I tell you what, too. One time I was catching the dart to get in there, and for the 2009 game, and the dart was jam packed. It was awful, and we were all like this, like elbow to eyebrow in that thing. And I missed like the first quarter. By the time I got there, Sam Bradford had already been knocked out, and I was like, "What's going on?" Like Sam Bradford's knocked out of the game. It's like, "Oh, okay." And then I also contracted swine flu. So just good thing Texas won that game. Would have been a bad day. 11:30 sucks. Yeah, this is great news.
If Colt McCoy doesn't tackle old boy on that interception, that's a bad day.
See, I'm trying to get a picture up from our Will Gallagher from the last time that game was at 2:30, and the scene
What year was
pretty.
it?
It was 2017. The scene is pretty nice. And
Let's say in the 2000s, it was pretty. That was a normal. The 2:30 was the normal because it came on ABC after the Miami Florida State. That was always your 11 one, and then it was Texas and OU.
So
that's another thing, Justin. When it was at 11:30, you'd like tune into the game on TV, and you'd have to like catch the end of like some like a nature show or something. And there's like no pomp and circumstance before the game. It's just like boom, you
jump right into it.
You just get parachuted into the most fierce rivalry in college football.
Game day was there pretty often, but that's maybe that continues. It probably will now that the SEC is going to be plastered all over ESPN. Coach, any thoughts on 2:30, or is it one thing Chris Del Conte said to me over the course of SEC spring meetings was, just put the ball down and we'll be ready. Is that kind of the thing that if you're inside a program, that's the way they approach it?
Yeah, you don't care about kickoff time as much if you're in the program, because you already know what the time is going to be, right? They're going to schedule practice around that time, so you're used to it. But I can tell you this as a fan, I like 2:30. I can't coach in high school, man, on Friday nights, and then getting home 1, 2 in the morning. Some kids, they want to go to the game. They're tired.
That's it. Recruiting.
And getting up there to see the game, sometimes it was brutal, right?
Yes.
Especially if you had an away game. And so I like the 2:30 kickoff. Kind of like Ian said, like you got a chance to kind of sober up, but you get a chance to get your Fletchers. You get a chance to do a lot of things in the fair because there's nothing like leaving the game and then being in the Fletcher's corn dog line, and then you're out there for an hour. Like that is terrible, man. So I like the 2:30 kickoff. You can get everything done, game's over, and then you can kind of get out of there. Honestly,
there's nothing worse than waiting for a late afternoon Fletcher's corn dog after a loss in that game.
Oh, kill me.
I like how Charlie said sober up. That's pretty funny. The one other thing that was kind of a storyline is that Chris Del Conte has been very, very adamant that he wants the Texas versus Texas A&M game moved to Thanksgiving night. This year it's on November 30th. That's a Saturday. And Trev Alberts, the new A&M athletic director, has said that he does not want that game on Thanksgiving night. I think he likes it off of it. I don't know if he said a preference between Black Friday and Saturday, but the two athletic directors are at odds in their opinions. Charlie, growing up watching this game, for me at least, it was pretty regularly on Black Friday. What do you think about this? Do you like Thanksgiving? Do you want it Saturday? What are your thoughts on it?
I like it on Black Friday. Now, I know I've witnessed it on Thanksgiving, but I like it on Black Friday because, like now you got your leftovers and then you got football. Like you can split it up from the NFL. That's why I like it, right? Because I want all the viewership on me on Texas playing A&M. It's the biggest game, one of the biggest rivalries. So having it on Black Friday, man, it's perfect. You got the people out shopping. They're not bothering you, right? I'm gonna say all the moms are out in the Walmart everywhere else. You get to watch football with the dads and the guys without nobody bothering you, man. Have a good time, have your leftovers. It's the best day for me.
Ian, you and I had kind of talked about with the NFL. They dominate Thursday and Thanksgiving. They have the Cowboys game, they have the Lions game, and then they have one more game. They have not tried as of yet to take over on Friday. But you made a point to where you think for a game like Texas and Texas A&M, they shouldn't care about what the NFL does.
Yeah, I think at some point one of these sports needs to stand up to the NFL. The NBA has tried and it's gone very poorly for them, but the NBA, it's not
The
the
NBA
same.
does well on that Christmas Day now, Ian. They
And
really
then
do.
this last year they had to go up against the NFL and they got stomped.
Did they?
But I think Texas and Texas A&M is the kind of game where you could try to plant a flag. It's like I prefer that game on Thanksgiving. It's a family affair. Most people have relatives on both
Yes.
sides of
Yes.
the battle. You can fight over that rather than your politics. It's a good end of day deal if you don't have so like most Texas people, your Cowboy game is earlier in the day, and then the NFL tries to pick a primetime game for
Right.
Thursday night. I can't remember if that's typically been even a good game or if it's no one's sure.
I mean, Amazon got screwed this year with what they've done. I'm looking it up right now, and it looks like it is going to be Dolphins Packers, which probably two teams that are going to end up above 500 rather than low, but still, and also the Raiders and Chiefs are playing on Black Friday this year. I'd forgotten about that.
Ooh, see, they just keep trying to take more and more.
They're going to milk Mahomes for as much as they can on these streaming services, guys. Prepare for that.
It makes sense. And I respect the hustle, but like Texas and Texas A&M should not be afraid of Packers Dolphins competing for prime time. Like somebody plant a flag, defend your home turf, and let's do this on Thanksgiving where it really belongs. And if not,
I grew up with it on Thanksgiving, and I grew up in a household of Aggies and Longhorns fighting each other because the Cowboys always had Thursdays as well. We had Cowboys during the day, Horns usually, and Aggies at night. But I'm with Charlie. I like it more on that Friday because one, I think it helps a little bit more with recruiting because it's hard to get a recruit on the road on Thanksgiving, and also with fans because a lot of times it's hard to get kids back for that game on a Thanksgiving day. And so, put it on Friday. I think Friday had been the norm for the last, 10 years of the A&M Texas game, I'm pretty sure. And I think that's the happy middle right there. But I'm not surprised Trev Alberts doesn't agree with Chris Del Conte. He probably thinks it's a splendid idea. But, but optically, if he agreed with the Texas AD, Jesus Christ, Lucci could put out a tweet and it would flip everybody off. And so at this point, yeah, Trev Alberts he's not going to be that transparent.
I'm trying to think. The Iron Bowl is pretty much consistently on Saturday.
Yes.
And at Saturday night. Michigan, Ohio State is on that Saturday at 11 a.m. I think there's one big takeaway that I had, or one moderate takeaway, is that the Egg Bowl, Mississippi State and Ole Miss, that's always kind of been traditionally a Thanksgiving night game. They even went to Friday this year. And I got to talk to the Mississippi State athletic director, and he gave a very smart, diplomatic answer. We can't wait to show college football world, put the state of Mississippi in the, prime viewing spot. They're still going against the Raiders and the Chiefs. So, Ian, I think you're onto something there. You got to plant a flag and say no at some point, because if not, then you're just letting the NFL take everything else. So
they're also like the Egg Bowl. Like I'm sure they do fine in Mississippi no matter when that game is played. But the TV execs that run things are like, hey, y'all might do fine in Mississippi, but if we put you all in another slot, like we could make money from. We want the national appeal,
exposure.
And the rest of the broader USA is not going on Thanksgiving. They're not going NFL. Oh yeah, an Egg Bowl, right? Like some do, but generally. But I just I don't care that much about this, but I feel like Texas versus Texas A&M would be just fine, and they should just do what they want.
Think that is a perfect place to end things off. Again, thank you to our sponsor, Laura Baker, the elite Andy Allen team. Give her a call, 512-784-0505. Please like this video, subscribe to the channel. We know you're going to love it here over on Inside Texas. And speaking of Inside Texas, head to InsideTexas.com. You can use IT1 as a promo code and get 2 months for just $1. Charlie, Justin, Ian, thank you so much for joining me on this Saturday. We'll see you next time on the Saturday Roundtable.